On November 13th, 1999, a housewife in Nagoya was found dead in her apartment with her 2-year-old son unharmed nearby. She was bleeding from the neck. To this day, this crime remains unsolved, despite a plethora of evidence and the police even having a rather detailed idea of who the culprit was. But what happened that day, and why was the criminal never caught in the 25 years that have since passed? Let's take a look. On November 13th, 1999, Takaha Satoru, 32, left the apartment he shared with his wife, Namiko, also 32, in Nagoya City, Nishi Ward, at roughly 9 a.m. to go to work. The pair met several years earlier while working at a real estate agency together, and then they got married in 1995. 2 years after that, they had a son. As Satoru left for work, Namiko mentioned she would be taking their son, now 2, to the pediatrician that day. A delivery man arrived at the apartment at 9:30 a.m. and nobody was there, and a friend who lived on the 3rd floor of the same building also tried calling Namiko at 10 a.m. and got no reply. Records from the pediatrician's office show that Namiko and her son were there shortly after 11 a.m, and then the husband of her friend from the 3rd floor reported seeing her return to the apartment building around 11:40 a.m. Then, at 2 p.m. that same day, several hours after Namiko returned home, the Takaha's landlord visited their apartment to give them some persimmons from their private garden. When nobody answered the door, they tried opening it and found it unlocked. Looking inside, the landlord saw a woman lying in the hall, bleeding. It was Namiko. She was lying face down, her head turned to the right, with a bump on the left side of her forehead and her glasses knocked off. The landlord quickly called the police, and Namiko's friend from the 3rd floor also came down after hearing all the fuss. She had tried calling Namiko again 3 times between 12:30 and 2, but Namiko never picked up. This was why. Inside, they found the Takaha's 2-year-old son sitting in his chair with the TV left on. On the table, they found soggy cup noodles and an unfamiliar fermented milk drink that was open but unfinished. Namiko's friend grabbed the boy and quickly called Satoru's company. He was out on business at the time and was told that his wife had been found unconscious and vomiting blood. He immediately set off for home, but on the way received another phone call, this time directly from Namiko's friend. And this time, he was informed that his wife was dead. Initially, Satoru reported that the thought of murder didn't even cross his mind. He had been told that Namiko was found vomiting blood after all, and although she didn't appear to be ill, he didn't once think that someone else had killed his wife. But around 4 p.m. that day, forensics told him that her throat had been cut. They were unable to determine at that particular point in time whether she had done it herself or if someone else had done it, however. Further investigations then revealed defensive wounds on her hands, as well as another wound on her neck. By this point, it seemed incredibly unlikely that she had done this to herself. Police were unable to find a murder weapon in the house, and there were no signs of anything being stolen either. They did find bloody shoe prints by the front door, however, and even blood from the person they believed was the perpetrator. It appeared they had also cut their hand during the struggle, and then washed them in the sink. Testing revealed this blood to be type B, and from a woman in her 40s or 50s. The shoe prints also came from a woman's high heels, 24 centimeters, and made in Korea. This same blood was also found in the building's stairs, in the car park, and even 500 meters away at Inol Park, where there was again evidence suggesting the woman washed her hands before fleeing north. The fermented milk drink in the apartment also posed an interesting problem. The Takaha family didn't drink these, and the brand also wasn't one that was sold locally. Tracing the serial number revealed that it came from the Nishi Mikawa district, over 35 kilometers away. Police also surmised that the cup noodles had been prepared shortly after Namiko returned home at 11:40 for her lunch. Yet, they remained mostly untouched. This would suggest that whatever happened took place shortly before or after lunchtime. Around this same time, Namiko's friend's husband was working on his car in the parking lot to the north of the building. When asked if he saw anyone suspicious while he was outside, he reported that he didn't. However, at some point between 12 and 1 p.m, he reported hearing a loud sound coming from the Takaha's apartment, something that sounded like a chest of drawers being moved, and this was immediately followed by someone running down the stairs. Other residents also reported hearing the sounds of a fight coming from the Takaha's apartment at some indeterminate time that morning as well. Police also found 2 witnesses who claimed to have actually seen the woman thought to have fled the apartment. One said that she was wearing a pink top, while the other said she was wearing all black. She was also said to be around 160 centimeters tall. One of the witnesses also saw her wading to cross the road to reach Inoue Park, holding her hand like it was injured. It appeared that both witnesses had indeed seen the same woman, and it's possible the discrepancy in what she was wearing could be put down to her simply taking her jacket off. Police also investigated whether she had taken some of Namiko's clothing to briefly disguise herself as she fled, but they were unable to find anything missing. Putting all this together, it appeared that a woman in her 40s or 50s entered the Takaha's apartment shortly after lunchtime. This woman and Namiko then got into an argument. A knife was pulled, and the women scuffled. Both women were injured during this fight, but then the other woman got the best of her, and Namiko died in the hallway. The woman then washed her hands, fled the building, made her way to the park nearby, washed her hands again, and then continued north, where the blood dripping from her injured hand eventually dried up and the trail went cold. Namiko then lay dead in her apartment for the next 2 hours, while her son sat in his children's chair with the TV still on. It appeared that Namiko potentially knew her killer. There were no signs of forced entry. The woman brought a drink with her that she left in the house half empty, and nothing was taken from the house either. The incident seemed to be personal. The son was also unharmed. Yet it was also possible that Namiko opened the door without checking who was on the other side. After all, they had a missed delivery slip from earlier that day, so perhaps she thought it was another delivery man. It's impossible to tell. Either way, police investigated friends and acquaintances to see if anyone harbored a grudge against the Takahas, but they were unable to find anything. And sadly, the case soon went cold. Police were unable to find the woman, despite having a fairly good idea of what she looked like thanks to eyewitness reports, and even a sketch of her likeness. It wasn't until just recently, March 2021 to be exact, that some more potential evidence came to light. A woman appeared on CBC TV in Nagoya and claimed that she lived next to the Takahas at the time. Roughly a week before the incident, she said she saw a woman who looked like the one in police sketches in front of the Takaha's apartment between 8 and 8:30 a.m. This woman had a silver attaché case with her, so she assumed she was selling cosmetics or something similar. The woman had placed the case in the door so that it couldn't be closed, and even when she greeted her, she just glared at her, ignored her greeting, and continued talking to Namiko. It's possible that this incident relates to another theory that has been suggested over the years, that it wasn't necessarily Namiko that the woman was after. It was perhaps a case of mistaken identity, or rather, revenge for another person. That person being Namiko's mother. When it comes to the case of mistaken identity, some theories have suggested that a family who lived nearby that had a different surname and yet shared similar kanji characters, was perhaps the actual target. Whether the woman read them incorrectly or just didn't pay close enough attention, it's possible that she may have just seen the Takaha's nameplate in front of their apartment and attacked Namiko thinking this was the person she was after, when in fact it was someone else. There's zero evidence to suggest this was actually the case though, and honestly feels like it's mostly throwing things at the wall to see what might stick. However, some interesting information about Namiko's mother came out after the incident that may shed new light on matters. A month before Namiko was killed, her mother transferred her certificate of residence from Hokkaido to Nagoya. She planned to move in with her daughter, and her name was even added to the family nameplate by the front door, and letters and parcels addressed to her were also being sent to the apartment. Why is this an issue? By itself, it's not. But roughly 1 year before the Takaha's son was born, Namiko's mother was arrested. She was suspected of violating the pharmaceutical affairs law by selling drinks for a health food company that said they were effective against cancer, and other such bogus medical claims. Her photo was even published in the newspaper, although in the end, she was released without prosecution. However, being arrested for selling scam drinks promising to be effective against cancer, even if she wasn't prosecuted, made it difficult to remain living where she was when people knew her identity. As such, Namiko's mother moved to Hokkaido to stay with family there. After several years passed, she then decided to move back and start living with her daughter in Nagoya again. Roughly 3 years had passed since her mother's arrest and then leaving for Hokkaido. Could the woman who attacked Namiko actually have been after her mother instead? Some have suggested that perhaps she was a victim of her mother's, having paid great sums of money for a drink purported to help fight cancer, that naturally did no such thing. Perhaps she even lost a family member to cancer afterwards, that soured her feelings even more. Did she mean to find Namiko's mother in the apartment? Remember, her name was now on the nameplate, but instead only found her daughter. If we believe the eyewitness testimony of the neighbor, it would appear she had possibly already visited the apartment at least once before. Did she leave after realizing the mother wasn't there, and then come back again at a later date to find her? Did she push her way into the apartment this second time in the hopes of perhaps finding the mother hiding inside, and when things went south, attacked her daughter instead? Or perhaps Namiko's mother wasn't the target all along, but rather it actually was Namiko, in order to, in a way, punish her mother. Considering what we know of this incident, it's hard to entirely rule this idea out. It puts together many strange pieces of the puzzle and doesn't necessarily have any glaring issues that could make this an impossible scenario. But again, it's just a theory. We also don't have any evidence to suggest this is actually what happened. Only ideas and guesses from the little information we know. Shortly after Namiko's death, Satoru and their son moved out of the apartment to live with Satoru's parents, but they continued renting it. It might sound strange, but they left the apartment as it was when she died, like a time capsule, and to this day, they hope that they can return there when the murderer is found and make her stand on that same spot where she took Namiko's life. Their son was only 2 when it happened. Although he's now an adult in his 20s, he has no memories of what happened, nor, sadly, even of his mother herself, and Satoru told the media that he hoped by keeping the apartment, it would help their son retain at least some memory of Namiko, by retaining the only physical tie they had left to her. And because they haven't touched the apartment since, remnants of the bloody shoe prints still remain on the ground by the front door even now. Naturally, renting an apartment for over 20 years that nobody lives in has been quite the financial burden on Satoru, who is now retired. In 2021, he told reporters that he was now living on a pension and didn't have the funds to keep paying 50,000 yen in rent a month for an apartment he didn't use. Although he planned to keep renting it for the time being, he envisioned that somewhere around the 25th or 30th anniversary of his wife's death, he would probably have to let it go and let contractors deal with everything. If he tried to do it himself, he wouldn't be able to get rid of anything. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the case, and to date, it still remains unsolved. Satoru is retired, and their son is now an executive secretary of the Sora no Kai, an organization made up of people who lost their families to murder. They fight to raise awareness, abolish systems like the statute of limitations, and establish other rights for victims of crime like this. To this day, he hopes to finally face the person who robbed him of his mother, although he has done his best to never appear sad or angry in the media, so that if the woman ever were to see him, she wouldn't have the satisfaction of seeing firsthand what she had done to him. And to this day, the police are still no closer to uncovering who that woman was. But what did you guys think of this one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.